Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, here on the 330ToGO Cavaliers NBA show. Happy Leap Day. Why we have a leap day, I'll never know. I'm sure there are people a lot smarter out there than me that know why we have a leap day, but I missed that lesson in school. I will say this, it means an extra paycheck for me in February. Even though, because it should be March 1st, but I still get my paycheck on time. And that's what really matters, right? Anyway, we are here to talk about the Cavaliers, as we always do. And, over the past couple of weeks, and I have some of your emails and some of your comments on my Amico Hoops Facebook page, which we'll look into those in a minute. But, last time we talked, I think they had won, they kind of had an uneven start. It was right after the All-Star break, but they had won 17 of 18. They were in that kind of groove, hadn't played real well those last few games before the All-Star break. Well, since then, guess what? They've had, I think, 4 games since then. Lost the Magic, lost the Sixers, lost the Bulls in double overtime on Wednesday night. And, of course, in there, Tuesday night, that win was one of their most miraculous wins in franchise history, which is when the Cavs, of course, beat the Dallas Mavericks on that 59-foot shot at the buzzer from Max Strus. It was one of the best all-around games I've seen, regular season games. I can't remember a regular season game, and again, I've been doing this, now year 20. I can't remember ever seeing a shot even close to that to win a game. And I'm not just talking about the Cavs. I'm talking about the NBA overall. So that was a miraculous shot. Then they come back the next night, play Chicago last night in Chicago, obviously had to travel there and just were not sharp at the end. They had multiple times to put the game away and weren't able to do that. So we're going to be talking about that real fast. Programming note next week, John Sable from WJW Fox 8 and, of course, the co-host on the Cavaliers on the Break podcast is going to join me. So I'm excited about that. He's in Florida this week with his family. I couldn't talk him out of taking a break, from his vacation with his family, which why wouldn't he want to do that when he could come here? But either way, he was being snotty and decided not to. So John Sable, again, will be with us next week. And, hopefully have some future guests coming up. Last week had Chase Smith from the Cavs on the Break podcast, who just a lot of fun. And for those who are wondering, we did put out another podcast Tuesday, Cavs on the Break, Chase and I. And you can download that at Apple Music or go to hoopswire.com. I have it posted there, along with about 20 other stories a day that we do every day at hoopswire.com. So, and I try to write as many of those about the Cavaliers as possible without making you all sick of me. So hopefully that's something that's not happened and you're enjoying our coverage there. So, and for all of you who have been visiting it, thank you very much. It's why I have this job, why I'm able to do what I do and do what I love and hopefully give you guys a break from your regular work day so you can talk basketball with me. So what I wanted to say first, let's go over, before I get to your comments, first let's go over what the Cavs have looked like lately. And I tweeted this out that if it wasn't for Max Strus's miracle shot, which again, for those of you who may not be living on the planet Earth and haven't seen it yet, Max Strus's shot to beat Dallas came with Cavs, no timeouts, 2.1 seconds left. I love the play. I love the inbound. He inbounded it to Evan Mobley from under the Mavericks basket. Mobley just passed it right back within a second, and Strus just, flung it up from what was officially ruled 59 feet. Right, and Luka Doncic from the Mavericks was actually defending that shot pretty well, and swish, So that was a very uplifting moment, I think, for a Cavs team that's kind of been rocky again since I want to say before the All-Star break. Let's put it this way. If he didn't make that shot, the Cavs would be 2-5 in their last 7 games. As it stands, they're 3-4. Now, these are all hypotheticals. The reality is they're 3-4. They could have been 4-3 against the Bulls had Donovan Mitchell knocked down 2 free throws instead of 1 with 13 seconds left in the first overtime. If in case you missed that game, Cavs really messed up at the end. Donovan Mitchell missed a free throw, which happens sometimes. So that at that point it was 115, 112, and then Jared Allen fouled DeMar DeRozan, Bulls guard DeMar DeRozan, on a 3-point attempt, and DeRozan, which was a silly foul. Allen admitted it as much after the game that he messed up, by fouling DeRozan. DeRozan knocked down all 3 free throws. The Cavs that sent the game double overtime. The Cavs were just way out of sorts in that second overtime. So, they could be 2-5 if Strus didn't make that shot. At the same time, they could be 4-3 if Mitchell had made that free throw. So either way, no matter how you spin it, the last 7 games after winning 17 of 18, they've kind of been uneven. I don't want to say bad. They've just been uneven. And I know you can't always win 17 of 18. You can't always go on winning streaks of 8 games and 9 games, which they've done this year. But I think that people aren't as concerned with the wins and losses as much as they are, how are they playing? Are they playing what JB Bickerstaff likes to call Cavaliers basketball? So I think they are at times, just not as much as they were before. Do Darius Garland and Evan Mobley have something to do with that? Maybe. Maybe they're working their way back into the rotation. The rotation's been a little bit clunky. It's not been great. I see your emails. I see your tweets, and you're not always real happy with JB Bickerstaff. You didn't complain at all when they won 8 or 9 in a row, but lose a couple games in a row. And even JB Bickerstaff has questioned the team, and that was after a win Sunday in Washington. The Cavs kind of lollygagged around the whole game and just were out of sorts in that game. Ended up winning because the Wizards stink. But I think the main thing is that JB Bickerstaff came away from that game saying the Cavs just have not shown enough spirit lately. We haven't been fighting, haven't been defending as well, haven't been crashing the glass like they normally do. Against Chicago, Andre Drummond, who has a vertical jump about 4 inches, ended up with 26 rebounds. And the Cavs were just pushed around in that game. And that was a problem last season against the Knicks. So people are fearful that the Cavs could potentially, get shoved around a little bit again under the basket, which is not something you're hoping to see if you're a Cavaliers fan. So you're going to have to excuse me. I'm going to read a couple of the posts real quick from fans that says Benny Hansen, who commented again. These are from my Amico Hoops Facebook page. And Benny says, I really don't understand JB not giving Sam Merrill minutes when Merrill is shooting at such a high clip, especially if JB wants to live and die by the 3 ball. Benny went on for a few minutes after that. So, or at least a few paragraphs after that. It would take a few minutes for me to read. But his point is valid in the sense that, why is Sam Merrill not playing when the Cavaliers value so much the 3-point shot? And, those other guys are playing a lot of minutes. The Donovan Mitchells, the Darius Garlands, the Karis LeVerts, the Isaac Okoros, and that's okay. That's good. But can you get Merrill in there to give him, to give those guys, 3 or 4 minutes of extra rest? That's a real good question. I think it's going to be tough sometimes to play Merrill, but when everybody's healthy, because sometimes you just have to ride what you got as best as you can. And there are other times too where, excuse me one second, that water is brought to you by Amico Hoops and hoopswire.com. But anyway, there are times you're going to be trying to play those guys and you're just not going to be able to do it because it's a rotational or a matchup thing, a minutes thing, and you have to decide, whose minutes do we take away in this situation. I know many of you are hoping that they take away Darius Garland's minutes sometimes and play Merrill. And you know what? Sometimes they could use that extra 3-point shooting. And I forgot, I didn't even mention Max Strus in that kind of rotation there. So I know that JB would really love to play 11 guys, and it's just not possible. I thought against Chicago, they could have given Merrill 3 or 4 minutes just to let those other guys get a rest, see if he could spread the court a little bit. Karis LeVert, I love him to death, but he missed a couple of wide open corner threes in that game against Chicago. He missed one at Philly that was very big, was wide open. And look, he's a hot and cold guy. That's what he came to the Cavs as, was a guy who's hot and cold, LeVert. But you've got to be able to knock those shots down. And those were shots that he was knocking down leading into this. So leading into the stretch of the last 7 games is what I mean. So, the Cavs really need to me, I think it's more than just the rotation. I think it's more than Garland and Mitchell, being worked back in. And again, they've still won 3 of the last 7, and it just hasn't been 8 of 9 or 17 of 18, 8 in a row, 9 in a row. They haven't looked as fluid as that. And I knew at some point they weren't going to, because the NBA season's 82 games long and it's ebbs and flows. And when that happens, you get into a stretch now where the Cavs are at last 7 games. Friday night, they're in Detroit. Very winnable game. By the way, a note on that game, Donovan Mitchell is questionable. Sounds like he has a sore hamstring. And don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. It seems like it's obviously nothing serious. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play, because the Cavs have the New York Knicks on Sunday and the Boston Celtics on Tuesday, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves, I believe, on Friday. So you're talking about the Celtics are number 1 in the Eastern Conference, Timberwolves number 1 in the West. The Knicks, obviously, although they've been befuddled by injuries lately, still kind of considered a rival. So there's a lot coming up that if you got to miss a game in Detroit, Donovan Mitchell, you're the Cavs. You should be able to beat the Pistons without Donovan Mitchell. So maybe he rests in that game. And then, but if we're talking about the big picture, I know some of you are concerned about the playoffs a little bit. Those are not quite, those are less than 2 months away. We're talking 6 weeks away. And I know some of you are concerned about how the Cavs have looked lately, how they've kind of been pushed around a little bit lately. I don't think it's a major concern. I think it's the things that the Cavs aren't doing well are very easy to correct, but they just don't look as focused to me as they have over the past, probably, if you throw the All-Star break in there, you're including that. So over the past 3 or 4 weeks, they just haven't been quite as intense as Scott Moskovitz said on my Facebook page. Scott's I guess he's a top fan. He's got the little badge, which I'm hoping that all of you eventually become top fans and get one of those little diamonds. Scott says, "Will the real Cavs please stand up?" And I think that says it all. The good news is right now they're 38-20. still in second place in the Eastern Conference, even though they've lost, 4 of 7. They are 6-4 in the last 10 games. And they're probably, put it this way. If they beat the Knicks and then can beat the Celtics, nobody's going to remember, what they've done recently, or I should say tonight. Because those are the type of games that are quote unquote statement games. And again, I know New York's banged up, so that's even more reason not to lose to them Sunday night at home. They're 3-7 in their last 10, the Knicks, without Julius Randle. OG Anunoby, who was their big pickup, is injured. Mitchell Robinson's been out most of the year. So the Cavs should beat the Knicks that game, if they play what J.B. Bickerstaff calls Cavaliers basketball. So there's a lot to be curious about and be I don't want to say be concerned. That's a little bit too strong, but there's a little bit to be nervous about, I guess, if you're a Cavs fan. And I think they have the talent, Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen, those guys are all borderline. Well, Mitchell's an all-star, and the other guys are what? Borderline all-stars for the most part, right? Allen certainly has had a borderline all-star season. Garland, maybe not so much, been up and down, missed a lot of time, obviously with injuries, particularly the broken jaw that set him back. I know he lost 8 pounds when he had that broken jaw because he couldn't eat anything. Am I overly worried? Basically, no. Do I think that they could use, another run here of a 4 or 5 game winning streak? It doesn't have to be anything great. I think they could use that. But I think more importantly than that is they need to play particularly with more, like I thought the Dallas game, they played a lot better and they could have lost that game. And I thought that was okay if they lost that game because they played a really good team that really improved at the trade deadline, right? But you lose that game, it's not a big deal because you played the right way. In Chicago, they played the right way for part of the game, but not all the game. And I really haven't seen them be pushed around like that on the glass. Chicago got, 75 rebounds? 74, which was the most that the Bulls have had in 50 years. Okay, that's the most the Bulls have had in a game in 50 years. And that's where the concern came in a little bit because when I was watching that game, it reminded me of the Knicks series in the first round of playoffs when the Cavs, when the Cavs looked terrible, which is going to happen when you have so many people who are playoff rookies. And now one of the guys, Christopher Watman, says to Jeff Walters on the Facebook page, you guys act like Chicago wasn't also on a back-to-back. And they had guys playing 50, 49, 48 minutes, which is more than any of our guys played. They played 10 guys, the Bulls, even though one was only 4 minutes. Okay, so that's a very good point that Christopher brings up, which is the Bulls lost the previous night to the Pistons in Chicago while the Cavs were beating the Mavericks on that miracle shot, which is a bit of trivia. The Bulls are the only team that the 9-win Pistons have beaten twice this season. And then the Cavs went in there and lost. So Chicago, if you think the Cavs at times can be maddening, just thank heavens you're not a Bulls fan because they will go on these stretches where they'll win 4 games in a row against quality teams, and then they'll go get beat by the Pistons at home. So that's what you call maddening. They're going to be fighting again for a spot in the play-in tournament without Zach LaVine, who's out for the year, Patrick Williams, their starting forward, who's out for the year. And Chicago's going nowhere fast. I still think the Cavs, on the other hand, have an opportunity to end up with that number 2 seed. I know a lot of you people don't think so. I know a lot of fans, at least that I hear from, don't think so. I think it's a possibility. Milwaukee's going to come on strong. They're only a half game behind the Cavs for the number 2 seed. And for those of you who care, only a half game behind the Cavs for the first place in the Central Division. most people don't even pay attention to divisions anymore. But hey, if the Cavs win the division, they can hang a banner and get that number 2 seed. And as I've said before, if you're the number 2 seed right now, if the playoffs were to start today, you would be picking between the likes of the Indiana Pacers, or you'd be matched up. You wouldn't pick. You'd be matched up with either the Indiana Pacers, Orlando Magic, Chicago Bulls, or Atlanta Hawks. So that's the number 2 seed matchup. Whoever emerges from the play-in tournament there would be one of those 4 teams if everything started today. If you get the number 3 seed, it's a different story. You're going to be playing in the first round, most likely either the Miami Heat, who, by the way, went to the finals last season and always play their best in the playoffs, or you're going to be facing potentially the Philadelphia 76ers, who are right there at the number 6 spot without Joel Embiid. And by the way, the Sixers have beaten the Cavs twice this month without Joel Embiid. In one of the games, they didn't even have Tobias Harris. So, and one of the games is in Cleveland. What makes that so interesting, and I know the Cavs didn't have Donovan Mitchell. What makes that interesting to me is if you remember earlier this season, the Cavs, without Donovan Mitchell, went to Philly, who had Joel Embiid, the reigning NBA MVP, and the Cavs still won the game. So this is regular season basketball. That's, everything I just said. Sometimes nothing makes sense at all. And, oftentimes that can be the case. With the Cavs, they have the ability to control a lot of things because we've seen them play their best. We've seen their depth. We've seen, obviously you have a true blue superstar in Donovan Mitchell. So, I think that they can maintain that number 2 seed. And I don't think, look, if they do end up with a number 3 seed, I don't think that automatically means, well, you're going to get beat out of the playoffs because you have to face Philly or Miami. I think that's probably, just a harder opponent. You could end up playing the Knicks again, by the time all this shakes out. The Knicks have 35 wins. The Heat have 33. The Sixers have 33. In fact, the Heat and the Sixers both are 33 and 25 entering tonight's games. And the Indiana Pacers are actually 34 and 26. So those 3 teams are tied for 6th. Orlando Magic are 33 and 26, so they're 1 game behind all of them. I'm sorry, a half game. The Orlando Magic right now are in 8th place in the Eastern Conference and a half game out of 5th. So, this is just as airtight as it was last year. And the Cavs at 38 and 20 are just a half game over the Bucks, who are 38 and 21. So, you want to stay in there. Nobody's catching Boston. I think the Cavs are 8 back of the Celtics. And it's just with 25 games left, there's just not enough time to make up. But you do want to send a statement to Boston Tuesday when you play them. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here, a lot happening with the Cavs. I think it's a really exciting time. Really, March, don't we all just start focusing on high school and particularly NCAA basketball? I know I do, even though, I'm updating the website with NBA stuff. I got the television behind me facing this way so I can kind of watch the games, NCAA tournament games while the NBA season's going on. But I will tell you this, March Madness applies to the Cavaliers this year and the NBA because as I just went through, that was just the Eastern Conference standings. The Western Conference is basically just as tight when you talk about Timberwolves, Thunder, Nuggets, Clippers at the top, and then down at the bottom, with the Lakers and obviously the Warriors are fighting for their playoff lives. Or actually, when it comes to Lakers and Warriors, they're fighting for their play-in lives. But, Dallas is 34 and 25, and they're in number 7 seed. They would have to play in the play-in tournament. A team with Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, that made great trades out west would have to play in the play-in tournament. So that's a very tight race out there. I haven't even mentioned the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant. So anything can happen in the West. The Eastern Conference, obviously the same thing. So really this regular season, usually in March, at least when I covered the NBA, when I first started covering the NBA, it was March was kind of the dog days. The players would just look at it like you're just trying to get through it, just get me to the playoffs. Well, now you got a playoff feel in March and April. So I think that's what's exciting for the Cavs. And even though they haven't been world beaters in February, we're still in February since we have this extra day that nobody can explain. But anyway, the Cavs will have plenty to play for in March, but they do have a good spot. They're in a good position. They control their own destiny. Just have to start taking care of business of some of these games that you're supposed to win. I don't have a major issue with the fact that they lost to Chicago in double overtime because a guy missed a free throw. And I'm not blaming Donovan Mitchell for missing that free throw, but he didn't have a great game. And guess what? Everybody deserves an off night. He and Jared Allen both had an off night. And usually when that happens, you would think the Cavs would lose by 20. They ended up taking the Bulls to double overtime. And the fact they won the game the night before, I don't think that's a big problem. What I haven't liked is how they haven't really closed some of these games. In Philadelphia, they had a great chance to win without Donovan Mitchell. Couldn't close the game. With the Bulls, you're up 9 early in the fourth quarter against a team that's kind of got one eye on the NBA draft lottery, and you couldn't close the game. Dallas managed to close that game thanks to a miracle shot, but they had, the Cavs had to lead in that and let that slip away. So I think that there's a lot to like about them as we head into the final. I guess it's 6 weeks, but final. I don't want to say final month because you still got that stretch there in April. Yeah. So a couple quick comments. Another one from Scott, who said Philly could fall to the play-in if Embiid isn't healthy. Then if he came back, it would be a bad matchup for the Cavs. That would be just the Cavs' luck. They could potentially end up playing a team from the play-in tournament. As I mentioned, like the Pacers are right there where they could pass Philly. Orlando Magic could pass Philly. I don't think the Atlanta Hawks will. But, those teams below them, I don't think the Bulls will either. But, it could end up that the Cavs end up getting the second seed, and then Philly emerges from the play-in tournament because they get Embiid back. And so all of a sudden, they're the 7th seed. And then they have Joel Embiid on top of that. That is not an ideal situation for the Cavaliers. So, but again, you're going to have home court advantage. You have to be able to take care of it when you get to the playoffs. And really, there's no excuses for the Cavs this year, right? Last year, I said, hey, look, they're all playoff rookies. There's so many of them. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Isaac Okoro. Those guys, those three right there, playoff rookies, were playing heavy minutes for much of that series against the Knicks. Then, of course, you had Karis LeVert and Jared Allen barely had any playoff experience, and none with the Cavs either. So both of theirs came with the Brooklyn Nets. So there wasn't a whole lot of experience there. This year, you've got a taste of the playoffs. You can see that it's a more physical brand of basketball. There's no excuse not to get out of the first round if you have home court advantage. That's why you play all regular season, is to get home court advantage in as many series as you can. Look, you have LeBron James in his prime. It doesn't matter what seed you are, right? Because you're going to win some road games in the playoffs. Younger team like the Cavs, or a more inexperienced playoff team like the Cavs, you need home court for as many possible games as you can get it. So anyway, Stephen Patterson, I've known him for a long time. Big Cavs fan. I used to see him at games. I don't see as much anymore, Stephen, maybe because I'm not quite at as many games. I don't know if I should admit that on a Cavaliers show. But anyway, Stephen, hello. Let's go Cavs for sure. And I think that should about wrap it up for this week. Now that I finally don't need a drink anymore, and I could probably talk for another hour straight without needing one, much to the dismay of the rest of my family. But, they're good at tuning me out. So I think we'll wrap it up here. I think we pretty much covered everything. Bottom line to me is the Cavs are in a really good spot. Been a little clunky lately, and that's okay because you're going to have those moments, but you want to be able to start winning some of these games and make some statements here. You don't want to go to Detroit and lose. That's for sure. You can't start. Can't if they go to Detroit and lose, maybe we'll do a special show called the Dumpster Fire or something. I don't know. But you don't want to go to Detroit and lose, and you don't want to. You certainly don't want to lose to the Knicks team that's really shorthanded right now at home. And then you got that big game against Boston Tuesday. You want to be healthy for that, and come out of that with a win, and then all of a sudden, you're in a pretty good spot. Beating Boston at home after losing to them twice at their place early this year, that would be a nice thing for the Cavs, not just for the narrative, but for the way they feel about themselves. And that's what's really important is how much confidence can we overtake these guys? Because guess what? If you are the Cavs and you do get out of the first round, you don't have to play Joel Embiid or the Miami Heat or any of those guys, and you advance. At some point, you're going to face the Boston Celtics, I assume, in the playoffs, and you want to know that you're able to beat them. And you learn those lessons during the regular season, right? That's kind of a put yourself in their minds that you can beat them. So, with that said, next week I'll be back with John Sable again, who has promised to join. John is a professional broadcaster, and I will tell you this. I'm obviously an NBA junkie going way back. You might be able to see back there in my terrible studio that I have one picture, and it's of Larry Bird. So that shows you how far back I go. But also, John is actually the king of Cavs trivia. We won't be able to get him off of the show. Next week's show might go 6 hours because he will be telling you all kinds of Cavs trivia from the 80s and 90s. John is the owner of chairs from the Richfield Coliseum. He has a whole set of chairs from the Coliseum. He's got a few other items that I think if he does the show in his man cave area, which is just fantastic. I've been over there. I didn't want to leave. I don't think he wanted me to leave either, but his wife wanted me out eventually. So it's just amazing the stuff he has down there from the old Coliseum that he's either bought or was gifted to him. I think he's got some items from League Park. But anyway, so I feel like this is kind of a John Sable show this week, with as much as I'm rattling on about him. I think I've spent 10 minutes on the Cavs and 25 on John Sable. So anyway, thanks so much for joining. And we will see what holds for the Cavs. By this time next Thursday, we'll have a good idea of, where they stand, if they're still in second in the Eastern Conference, and how they looked against the Celtics and Knicks and Pistons. They also got a road game against the Atlanta Hawks, which is never easy. And then, of course, the Western Conference leading Minnesota Timberwolves next Friday. And by the way, you won't have heard this from the national media. I promise this is my last thing. But there's a finals rematch on tonight. The Miami Heat are at the Denver Nuggets. And I feel like I'm the only guy who notices that, because those two teams still don't get any love, even though they were in the finals last year. Anyway, that'll do it for me. So thanks so much for checking us out. And we will be here again next Thursday at 6 o'clock. See you then.